The first time he saw her, she wasn't quite standing, more like hovering an inch above the floor with the lazy curiosity of a cat observing a new room. The soft green glow from the lab's security lights traced her silhouette, illuminating smooth silver skin that shimmered with the faintest pulse, as if threads of starlight ran beneath it. He didn't speak. He didn't even breathe. He just stared, realizing in one single dizzying moment that he was no longer alone and that whatever she was, she definitely wasn't from Earth. Are you going to keep staring like that? Or do humans always freeze when something smarter walks in? Her voice teased, light and melodic, with an accent that didn't belong to any corner of this planet. The words were perfect English, yet slightly off, as though each syllable had been studied, decoded, and reassembled by someone who found language fascinating but unnecessary. He blinked hard, his mind racing faster than his pulse. The base had been sealed after midnight, the desert beyond the windows a blank sheet of black dust. No one could have entered, not without authorization, not without tripping 40 alarms. But she was here, standing in his lab, smiling like they were about to share an inside joke he hadn't heard yet. You can't be here, he managed. This is a restricted facility. Oh, restricted, she echoed, drawing out the word, her eyes gleaming a playful shade of violet. And yet, here I am. You humans really do enjoy rules you can't enforce. He stepped back, fumbling for the emergency beacon on his wrist. But the device sparked and died before his thumb even touched it. The entire control panel beside him flickered. All the screens went black. The hum of the lab systems slowed to silence until only her faint, rhythmic glow filled the room. "Don't bother," she said softly, moving closer. "Your machines are tired. I gave them rest." Her calmness unnerved him more than the blackout. No aggression, no threat, only amusement. She studied him like he was the specimen. Maybe he was. He forced his voice steady. "Who are you?" That made her grin. Everyone asks that first. You should really ask what I am. It's more interesting. She was toying with him, clearly. And yet he couldn't look away. Something in her expression held a strange kindness, wrapped in sharp wit. Like a person who'd seen too much and wanted to laugh instead of cry about it. He thought of the years he'd spent analyzing cosmic transmissions, strange signals, faint beacons lost in static. He'd dreamed that someone, somewhere, would answer back. But never, not once. Had he imagined the answer would come walking into his lab with a mischievous smile and a voice that sounded like dawn breaking? "You're from out there?" he asked quietly. "Beyond the Kuiper line?" "Farther," she said. "Much farther than your telescopes can whisper about yet." That answer was both thrilling and terrifying. He'd always wanted proof, solid, undeniable proof that humanity wasn't alone. But proof came with consequences. Proof was never gentle. She reached out her hand. Her fingers, long and jointed almost delicately, caught the light as though made of liquid glass. "You've been calling to us for years," she continued. "All your little antennas and deep space songs. Primitive, but endearing. We finally decided to see who keeps knocking. So you came. To Earth." "I came to you," she corrected, tilting her head. "You're the one who sent the coordinates, remember?" He swallowed hard. That couldn't be right. He'd only set a private frequency, a harmless test ping sent toward a patch of dark space. He'd never expected a reply, let alone a visitor who could glide through locked doors and silence entire systems with a glance. "You mean that? Signalet?" "Actually, yes. Human." Her tone softened, almost fond. "You called, and I answered." "So?" She leaned closer, eyes flicking with amusement. "What else do you expect to receive from me? Human?" The way she asked it wasn't threatening, it was teasing, but with layers he couldn't read. Every instinct screamed that she wasn't dangerous, and yet every other instinct begged him to run. She was something entirely outside the scale of what he understood. Graceful, impossibly calm, radiating energy that felt alive. He forced a nervous laugh to hide the tremor in his voice. Well, a name would be a start. She smiled again, as if he'd passed a small test. Names are such fragile things. But I suppose you'll need one to talk about me later. You can call me whatever makes you comfortable. Most species begin that way. He studied her in silence. You're really not going to tell me your actual name, are you? The vibrations of my true name would shatter your teeth, she said pleasantly. So, let's avoid that. Despite the fear creeping through him, he found himself smiling too. It was absurd laughing with a stranger who might be capable of unmaking physics, but absurdity seemed safer than panic. Okay, he said quietly. Let's start over. You're here. I'm here. What happens now? That, she said, circling him slowly, depends on what kind of story you want to write about us. Her words sent a chill through him, not cold, exactly, but like something vast had just leaned closer to listen. She stopped behind him, whispering near his ear. You humans have so many stories about visitors. Some end in fire. Some end in friendship. Some are still being written. He turned to face her, his mind a swirl of questions that tripped over each other. What do you want from me? Want? She repeated, tilting her head again. You misunderstand. You're the one who asked for contact. I'm just answering your request. The question isn't what I want, it's whether you're ready to receive what you asked for. He tried to form words, but none came. Her gaze held him there, rooted. The faint alien glow spilled over the lab walls, flickering like auroras trapped indoors. The air seemed to thrum, dense with unspoken energy. Outside, the desert wind howled against the window panes, rattling them like a reminder that the rest of the world still existed. Though he wasn't convinced of that anymore. Don't look so worried, she said gently. I didn't travel across half a galaxy to hurt you. You're far too interesting for that. He barely managed a whisper. Then why come? Before she could answer, the alarmstead moments ago screamed to life. Red lights flooded the lab. Somewhere down the hall, doors slammed shut. The power returned in a violent surge, screens flaring with static. Through the noise and chaos, she looked at him calm, almost sad. Oops, she said playfully, though her eyes held something deeper. I suppose your people just noticed me. On the nearest monitor, he caught sight of motion security units moving toward their location. Suited figures armed and shouting into radios. The signal he'd once dreamed of finding had turned into a flashing red alert spreading across every system in the base. You need to hide, he said quickly. They'll try. She interrupted softly. Humans always try. And that's what I love about you. The hum beneath her skin intensified. Light gathered like a storm around her movements. The air crackled, metal trembling as if reality itself found her too heavy to hold. He reached out, desperate to stop whatever she was about to do. Wait, don't go. The smile she gave him then was unlike the teasing one before. This one held understanding, a hint of sadness, and something almost protective. You asked for first contact, she said. Now you have it. But remember, human answers always come with a price. And just as the door behind them burst open, the light consumed the room, blinding, weightless, endless. Then she was gone. The light faded as abruptly as it had come, leaving the lab smelling faintly of ozone and burned circuits. For a moment, there was only silence, thick and unreal. The displays around him blinked uncertainly before going dark again, as though unsure whether to trust the electricity. His eyes watered, trying to refocus. The space where she'd stood was empty, no trace, no mark, not even a shadow that could prove she had ever been there. He wanted it to have been a dream, a hallucination brought on by sleepless nights and caffeine running thin in his veins. It should have been impossible. Yet the heat still lingered in the room, and his skin tingled faintly, as if every atom had been rearranged and was still deciding whether to accept the new layout. The door burst fully open then, and the noise of reality returned in a rush boot slamming against the metal floor. Shouts, the clipped, cold efficiency of people trained for disaster. He was hauled back to the present by a firm grip on his arm and a beam of light flashing across his eyes. Stand down. Identify yourself. Someone barked, "It's me, it's he," started. But they recognized him quickly enough, lowering their weapons when they saw his ID tag. Still, their eyes darted around the room, wide with confusion. What the hell happened here? The question came from the operations chief, a broad woman whose authority could silence 10 men at once. You triggered every alarm in the base. Power surges spiked across all systems and then dropped. What did you do? I didn't, he began, then stopped, caught between the truth and the impossible. Saying an alien appeared and shut down our technology with a smile might not go over well on a Tuesday night. It must have been a power feedback. Some kind of energy resonance. The chief didn't look convinced, but she also had a dozen other fires to put out. Fine, we'll run diagnostics. You're confined to quarters until we figure out how your lab decided to explode our defenses. He nodded numbly. It wasn't a punishment so much as a precaution, but it felt like a cage. As the lights flickered back to proper brightness, he caught sight of a peculiar smear near one of the consoles, a faint iridescent mark. Almost invisible unless the light hit it just right. When he reached for it, one of the guards snapped, stepped back, and the moment was gone. They ushered him out before he could look again. Back in his room, the silence pressed in around him. He sat on the edge of the narrow bunk, staring at his hands. Every explanation he tried to form fell apart under the weight of what he'd seen. He wanted to doubt it. He wanted logic to rescue him. And somewhere beneath the fear, something else stirred a quiet thrill. She had said you called, and I answered. He hadn't lied about the transmission. Months ago, in a burst of frustration, he'd configured an experimental deep beam signal using frequencies the communication department had dismissed as useless. Despite protocols, he'd left it running. He'd half-joked to a colleague that maybe, if there was anyone out there, they'd take pity on humanity's constant loneliness and respond. Now, someone had. The ceiling lights dimmed automatically as the base cycled into night mode, casting long blue shadows across the metal walls. He lay back, eyes open, unable to rest. At some point, as silence deepened into something heavier, a soft flicker passed over the room. He sat up suddenly. The shimmer appeared again near the corner faint. Hesitant, like the aftermath of a memory, refusing to fade. Then the air rippled, and she was there, not entirely solid, almost transparent, but unmistakably her. The same violet eyes, the same amused tilt of her mouth. "You're not supposed to be here," he whispered. His throat felt dry. "They're scanning for energy spikes. You'll get caught." She smiled faintly. "Do you think your scanners can cage photons? Relax, human." I muted your space for a few moments. No one's peeking. The edges of her form wavered like a reflection on disturbed water. "You're still here," he said, disbelief creeping through the awe. "Of course," she replied. "Our connection isn't so easily broken. Once contact is made, some threads remain." Her tone softened as she studied him. "You're thinking this doesn't make sense." "It doesn't," he admitted. "You shouldn't exist." Her laughter drifted through the room. "Most of what exists doesn't ask your permission first." It was such an absurdly reasonable statement that he almost smiled. But then he remembered the alarms, the panic in the base, the risk she had left him in. They saw the energy you released. You've put both of us in danger. Her expression turned thoughtful. Your people fear what they can't name. That much we've learned from studying your world. But fear burns itself out eventually. Curiosity lasts longer. So what were you doing here? He pressed, why up here to me? She seemed to consider this for a moment, her glowing outline shifting gently with each word. Curiosity cuts both ways. You sent your signal into the dark. I followed it because you sounded lonely. Most of your kind send data, equations, coordinates. You sent silence between the numbers. The pauses said more than the code. His heartbeat quickened. You read the pauses. That's where the truth lives, she said simply, and perhaps where danger begins. Outside the room, a faint thud echoed footsteps approaching. He turned sharply, and when he looked back, she was fading again. Wait. She looked almost sad this time. We'll continue this, human. But next time, perhaps you'll be ready to listen instead of question. Then she was gone, leaving only the faint electric taste of ozone and wonder behind. The next day passed under watchful eyes. Everywhere he went, someone followed security taking quiet notes, scientists whispering out of his range. He caught glimpses of data screens flashing strange readings that were quickly turned away when he drew near. The base felt less like a workplace and more like a containment zone. Late in the afternoon, he was summoned to the command room. The operations chief waited, arms folded. On the main screen behind her played a slowed recording of the previous night's events, the moment of the surge. The brief silhouette formed in the light, indistinct but certainly humanoid. Explain this, she said evenly. Her tone was calm, but her eyes betrayed strain. He hesitated. Lying outright would invite suspicion. Telling the truth would sound like madness. I don't know, he said at last. I think we might have received something. Or someone. A response to a deep space transmission. The chief stared at him for a long moment. Then, quietly, do you think it's still here? He thought about the shimmer, about the conversation no one else would believe. Yes, he said finally. I think it's waiting. A murmur rippled through the room. One of the analysts leaned forward. If we can localize the source, maybe we can attempt controlled communication. The chief frowned, but didn't protest. Do it carefully, she said. No more surprises. That night, when he was escorted back to his quarters, he found the faint glow had returned, but this time it wasn't hidden. A pattern pulsed faintly across his console, an arrangement of light like clusters of stars forming a message. He leaned closer. The shapes rearranged themselves, forming words in his own alphabet. Do they always try to cage what they don't understand? He typed back instinctively, unsure if the response would even be seen. They fear losing control. After a moment, new letters appeared. Control is a beautiful illusion. You build walls around fear and call it safety. But what happens when the thing outside learns how to knock? His fingers hovered, trembling slightly. You sound like you want to test that. The lights flickered, and faint laughter drifted through the same musical tone as before, echoing everywhere and nowhere. You invited the test, human. He stared into the shifting glow until it faded again, leaving him alone with silence that no longer felt empty. Somewhere deep within the base, unseen by any of them. A signal pulsed outward into space, stronger, clearer, carrying signatures not created by human hands. It wasn't just a reply anymore. It was an announcement, and far above the planet, in the thin quiet between constellations, something stirred. The base no longer slept. There was always movement, now technicians hurrying from one terminal to another. Guards stationed at every junction. Communications officers leaning over monitors with dark circles under their eyes. Rumors had spread faster than any official report. Some said a weapon test had gone wrong. Others whispered about contact trio, confirmed undeniable contact. No one dared say the word alien out loud, but it hovered over every conversation like a silent alarm. He moved through the corridors with a dull ache behind his eyes. Every few hours, more data requests arrived from Central Command, demanding analysis on the surge, the interference, the energy traces that still refused to obey any known laws. None of them knew he'd already spoken to the source of it twice. None of them could suspect she was still here, somewhere between the digital hum of their systems and the edges of visible light, waiting for the right moment to reveal herself again. He'd tried to focus on work, tried to pretend he was just another scientist doing his job. But each time he blinked, he could almost feel the faint vibration she had left behind, like an itch in the air that memory couldn't scratch away. Late at night, in the hours before dawn, he caught brief distortions in the reflections of glass or metal surfaces, tiny flares of violet color that vanished before he could be sure. The real trouble began when the higher-ups arrived. A convoy landed one gray morning, churning up sand and suspicion. Men and women in dark uniforms stepped out with grave expressions and sealed briefcases. They were from the Defense Oversight Agency, the kind of department that didn't usually bother explaining itself. Within an hour, every scientist was under review and several labs were locked. He didn't even realize they'd flagged him as a key witness until two of the agents showed up outside his quarters. The taller one spoke first. "You were in the lab when the event occurred." It wasn't a question. "We'll need your full debrief, unrecorded draft notes, and any private transmissions you've made in the past 3 months. My private." "It's standard," the agent said with a clipped voice. "This is classified at top level now." "You'll comply." He had no choice. They followed him to his terminal, scanning drives and storage with handheld devices that hummed softly. He watched helplessly as they copied everything, including the encrypted side frequency he had used to send his first experimental signal weeks ago. When the shorter agent noticed it, there was a flicker of alertness. "What's this channel?" "Test data," he lied, heart pounding. "It's nothing. Unused band." The agent made a note but didn't comment further. When they finally left, the silence that followed felt like the steady, invisible breathing of something larger than the base itself. That night, the lights in his room dimmed again without warning. He didn't jump this time. He just waited. And she came. Her form flickered into view near the wall, still translucent but steadier than before. "Your kind is restless," she observed, amusement lingering in her tone. "You call for the unknown, then panic when it answers." "They're scared," he said softly. "They don't know what you are. I gave you my presence. Isn't that enough?" "It's too much," he said, almost laughing. "You shut down an entire installation just by existing near it. You think they could ignore that?" Her glow pulsed faintly, neither anger nor apology. "I forget how fragile your systems are. Every interaction leaves fingerprints. But I mean no harm." He believed her, and that scared him even more. "You have to go," he said. "If they detect another energy surge, they'll think we're under attack. They'll bring weapons, real ones." She stepped closer, head tilting as if she were trying to read his face the way humans studied maps. "Do you think I'm afraid of your weapons?" He shook his head. "No, I think you're underestimating what fear can make us do." For a moment, she said nothing. Then her eyes softened, and the light around her dimmed slightly. "You humans are remarkable. You dream of connection, but build barriers around every dream. Perhaps that's why I came to see whether curiosity can survive fear." Outside his window, the desert stretched in silver moonlight, calm and indifferent. "You're not leaving, are you?" he asked quietly. She smiled, a flicker of stars passing through her features. "Not yet. The story isn't finished." After she disappeared again, he sat awake until morning, replaying her words. Each encounter left more questions than answers. What did she really want? Was she alone? And why had she chosen him out of all the signals on Earth? By the next day, the agents had extended their hold on the base. Military drones patrolled the airspace, scanning for anomalies. Portable sensors monitored magnetic variations across the compound. The scientists whispered about data vanishing's files, erased as if rewritten from inside the system itself. He knew exactly who could do that, but saying so would ruin him. Meanwhile, his own research terminal began displaying stray phrases, short messages that seemed to appear out of nowhere. At first, he thought the system was malfunctioning. Then he realized the text wasn't random. "You should tell them the truth," one read. Later, another appeared. "If they seize control, what happens to your discovery?" He answered one by typing back carefully. "They're trying to protect humanity." The text flickered, then rearranged itself. "Or protect their power." Before he could respond, a knock at the door snapped him out of it. A fellow researcher stood there, eyes wide and nervous. "They're running an analysis on our transmissions," she said quickly. "Whatever caused the interferences, replicating. There's a second signal now, coming from orbit. Someone's answering your broadcast again." His blood turned to ice. "That's impossible. She's already here." "Then either there's another one," the researcher breathed, "or she's not alone." Within hours, the base fell into barely contained chaos. The outer sensors picked up energy readings far beyond known parameters, pulses of structured deceiture, data spiraling around the planet's upper atmosphere. They weren't attacks, not exactly. They felt like messages, but encoded in physics none of them fully understood. Command issued emergency lock. No one was allowed to leave or send transmissions outside the compound. He spent the following days caught between interrogation sessions and hidden moments at his console, staring at strange incoming patterns that reminded him of her laughter, soft, precise, rhythmic, like music translated into mathematics. The agents demanded answers he didn't have. "Is this an invasion beacon?" One shouted. "Did you trigger it?" "I don't know," he kept saying. "I don't know." But late one night, as the storm outside raged like the planet itself was uneasy, her voice returned through the static of his monitor. He didn't see her this time only, the ghost of her tone threading through the noise. "They heard me," she said. "The others are curious now. You've opened a door they were told never to touch." "What do you mean, others?" He whispered, trembling. "Different minds, different dreams. Not all will be gentle." He swallowed hard. "Can you stop them?" A long pause. "Could you stop your own kind if they decided to act out of fear?" Her words struck deep. Images of the armed soldiers and nervous scientists filled his mind, overlapping with her unseen companions drifting in the dark above. Two species, both scared of what they didn't understand, both ready to strike first. "What do they want?" He asked, "For now, to see if you are worth the conversation." Her signal flickered weaker. "You must choose carefully, human. Show them your courage, not your panic." Then she was gone again, and outside, the distant sky glimmered with faint, pulsing patterns, signals mirrored in shifting constellations. The Defense Oversight Agency soon declared the phenomena a potential hostile presence, and evacuation orders were prepared for non-essential personnel. He was no longer just a scientist. He was now a liability, the only person who had spoken to the unknown. As soldiers began dismantling equipment and evacuating files, he realized that soon humanity's first message to the stars might be rewritten as an act of war. And somewhere above, unseen but listening, the alien girl's kind was waiting to judge what kind of world was calling them curious, fearful, or foolish enough to start something it couldn't contain. The desert wind sharpened as night fell again, carrying with it the uneasy hum of approaching storms, part natural, part something else entirely. The base had turned from a research facility into an armed island buried beneath tension. The air was heavy with the metallic scent of fear and ozone. Temporary power lines crackled, drones circled above like restless insects, and human voices had slowed to whispers. Everyone knew something vast was unfolding overhead, but no one could agree on what. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw her face, calm, luminous, both gentle and impossibly distant. Her warning replayed like a heartbeat, not all will be gentle. Now, from the window of his room, the horizon shimmered with strange lights that didn't belong to the sky. They moved in patterns, deliberate and almost graceful, like thoughts tracing themselves across the dark. Rumor had already leaked to command. The entities were communicating in structured bursts of radiation, echoing the original human broadcast. But now the frequency wasn't limited to the base. Global satellites were picking up similar signals from orbit. The unknown had gone public, and humanity's first reaction was to raise shields instead of hands. He sat at his console, trying to isolate her wavelength, hoping she was still listening. "You said they're curious," he whispered into the static. "Then talk to me, please." His voice was barely a thread, but he needed to believe she could still hear it. The screen flickered. For a heartbeat, the letters rearranged into a faint glow of words, "Not safe to speak." The message burned away instantly. But he caught one more faint flicker beneath each outline, too small to register on standard instruments, orbiting just beyond the planet's upper layers. The computers labeled it as debris. He knew better. The others were watching. Sirens broke through the silence. He rushed into the corridor as soldiers pounded past. Red warning lights painted the floor. A technician yelled that high-altitude sensors had detected an energy concentration forming above the desert. Fields so dense it bent local gravity readings. When he reached the command center, it was chaos. Screens filled with data storms, officers shouting, drones flaring into the sky. Unidentified phenomenon 20 kilometers above ground. Someone shouted, "It's directly over our position." The operations chief gripped the console, her eyes locked on the feed. Target analysis. No target lock. It's just hovering. He stepped closer. The image showed a strange, translucent shape suspended in the upper atmosphere, nor cloud. More like a wound cut into the air, shimmering with pale blue light. Within it, threads pulsed in steady rhythm, expanding outward like a heartbeat against the heavens. His knees felt weak. "That's them," he said under his breath. "It's the others." The chief turned sharply to him. "You know something about this." He hesitated. Lying felt pointless now. They're communicating. They're responding to our signal and her interference. But they're not attacking. If you threaten them, she cut him off. "You think this isn't a threat? Look at that sky. Half our electronics are collapsing. That field is tearing communications apart." As if on cue, the base lights flickered, consoles whined, and data streams froze mid-sequence. The faint pressure in the air made his teeth axe, though the atmosphere itself had become aware. Command ordered aerial units into position. Fighters soared up into the night, vanishing into the strange halo above. He watched their telemetry fade one by one until only silence remained. No explosions, no distress calls, just absence. Something else began bleeding through the speakers then. Not noise. A pattern. A low vibration that carried a kind of mournful rhythm, layered with harmonics too precise to be random. The technicians froze, listening. It wasn't sound. It was language in another key. A younger officer whispered, "It's beautiful." "Mute that channel," snapped the chief. Now? He couldn't stay silent. "Wait. They're trying to communicate. This isn't an attack." She rounded on him, fury and fear colliding. "How do you know that?" "Because she told me." The room went still. Every eye turned to him. For a moment, there was only the hum of machinery and the faint, distant vibration of that impossible voice from above. The chief spoke quietly now. "You made contact, didn't you?" He nodded once, chest tight. "She answered my transmission. She appeared here. She shut down our systems to protect us, not harm us." "Protect us from what?" He hesitated again. The static on the screens thickened, the image outside the base flickering with strange lights rippling across the atmosphere. "From them," he said, finally. "From her own kind. Some didn't want her to reach us. Maybe they don't think we're ready." She exhaled sharply, pressing a hand to her forehead. "Wonderful. We've become an intergalactic dispute zone." Suddenly, alarms flared again higher, this time strained. Mass signature incoming. Energy descending fast. The main display showed streaks of violet light splitting through the upper sky. Elegant and terrifying, like falling stars choosing where to land. One of them was coming straight toward the desert near the compound. Everyone moved at once: sirens, orders, evacuations. He barely heard the shouting. All he could feel was that strange connection humming inside his head. She was coming back. He ran through the halls as the base trembled. Outside, the storm ripped across the ground sand, lifting like smoke beneath flashes of unreal color. He reached the observation platform just as the world lit up. A column of radiance hung suspended over the dunes, opening wider, forming a sphere of light that pulsed from violet to silver and back again. Within it, her shape began to tremble into being. She looked different, now brighter, but also more fragile, as if part of her strength had been left in the sky. She turned to him the instant she stabilized, her eyes glowing with both relief and urgency. "They're here, human," she said, breathless. "And they don't trust me anymore. They think we poisoned you," he guessed. "They think I told you too much." She stepped closer, her light unstable. "They'll silence your kind if they believe you tried to reach beyond your place." Behind her, motion stirred in the glowing air-massive silhouettes, moving as though space were folding for them. The base's outer sensor towers sparked and collapsed, powerless against the distortions. The entire desert shimmered, reflecting violet starlight like water. The operations chief's voice cracked through his radio. "What's happening out there? What are those readings?" He didn't answer. His gaze stayed locked on the forms descending within the light. They weren't ships, they had no symmetry or metal agruses, just colossal streams of energy, alive and purposeful. Waves of soundless movement pressed against his mind like an emotion too large to hold. She reached out to steady him. Her fingers were cool and faintly electric. "You wanted contact," she said softly. "Now your world will know what that truly means. They'll fight," he whispered. "They won't understand." "That's the paradox of your species," she said with quiet sorrow. "You're brave enough to call across galaxies, but terrified when the echo answers." Flashes lit the horizon's surface, batteries activating, missiles streaking into the sky. The first of the projectiles vanished before reaching the energy field, dissolving into harmless trails of dust. The second response came from above, a wave of light, sweeping delicately but with enough force to knock him to his knees. Inside the command center, shouts filled the comms, systems collapsing faster than anyone could compensate. For a few seconds, the entire desert appeared suspended in glassy silence. And then the alien girl spoke again. Her voice layered with both fear and defiance. "They're asking if your species is worth saving," she said. "If you can survive your own fear long enough to listen." He stared at her, heart pounding. "Tell them yes. Tell them we can change." Her expression trembled. "I want to believe you." She turned toward the lights gathering above, 1,000 brilliant threads preparing to descend. But belief alone may not be enough this time. The wind roared, tearing across the field. The entire base shook as an unseen force pressed downward, flattening sand, bending steel. He could barely stay on his feet. The officers inside shouted into dead radios. Electricity arced across towers like veins of lightning unraveling. He felt her hand tighten around his wrist, her glow merging faintly with the static in the air. "If they make the wrong choice," she whispered, "I won't be able to stop them. What can I do?" He shouted over the storm. "You already did," she said, her voice faint. "You proved they can answer when spoken to with hope, not fear. But now you need to show them." The sky above cracked wide open, a vertical river of light spilling across the desert like a living curtain. The air rumbled like it was being rewritten. Every human eye turned upward, waiting for judgment from whatever intelligence waited beyond, and, as the light poured downward, blinding and perfect, he realized the next breath might decide whether two species shared the same universe or destroyed it forever. The desert disappeared in light. Not fire, not heat, just an endless pale brilliance that felt like standing inside a heartbeat too large for the world. For a moment, it was impossible to tell where sky ended and ground began. The wind fell still. Every sound folded into silence, leaving only a feeling of being seen by something vast that wasn't cruel. Just ancient and curious. He couldn't move or speak. Neither could she. The radiance from above thickened, spiraling down in threads of silver that wove through the air until they touched her. For an instant she flinched, then straightened, her own glow pulsing brighter in response. The others, her kind, her people, her watchers, were speaking to her without words. He could feel it as a low resonance in his bones, like emotion turned into sound. Her voice came to him softly, echoing in that strange calm. "They want to understand what I see in you." He swallowed hard. "Then show them." "I'm trying." Her light shifted with effort. "But truth doesn't translate easily. They measure worth differently, by harmony, by survival, by how a species listens to its own chaos." Something enormous moved above them, unseen yet present, bending starlight with each motion. From the base below came faint echoes of panic humans running, shouting, trying to make sense of what couldn't be categorized. And still, the light didn't harm. It only waited. She turned toward him, and he realized she was fading slightly, as though the connection that bound her to this place couldn't sustain much longer. "If they leave," she said quietly, "your world will wake again to silence. But silence can be mercy or punishment. It depends on what you do after." He wanted to reach out, to grab her hand, but she was more energy than matter now, heat curling faintly around his fingers. "Tell them we can change," he said again, "that we can learn." Her eyes glowed bright enough to make him blink. Then she raised one arm toward the heavens, and every thread of light froze mid-motion. The vibration deepened. He heard human radios flicker back to life below, confused voices blurring into one another. The lights shifted direction, not attacking, but flowing outward, scattering into the upper atmosphere like seeds carried by wind. And just like that, the weight lifted. The pressure vanished. The air came rushing back. The sky dimmed to its natural darkness, except for a faint shimmer tracing the stars like fading ink. She exhaled, trembling. "They've watched enough," she whispered. He looked around in disbelief. The base still stood, scorched in places, but intact. The soldiers were emerging from their cover, staring upward in cautious awe. The strange sphere above dissolved into fragments that drifted off into space. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "That humanity is still writing its first sentence in the language of the stars," she said softly. "And that I believe in how that sentence ends." Her tone was bittersweet, like someone proud and afraid at the same time. He almost laughed from exhaustion. "So, we passed." Her smile flickered faintly. "You didn't fail. the first rays of dawn began pushing over the horizon. For the first time in days, real sunlight touched the sand. Warmth replaced the electric chill in the air. She turned her face toward it, studying the colors as if memorizing them. "You live on a fragile world," she said. "Your storms, your wars, your small kindnesses, they all teach different lessons." They wanted to erase you from their maps. But now they hesitate. He let his breath out slowly. "Will they come back?" "Someday," she said. "When you're ready." He looked past her at the faint glimmer still hanging in the upper atmosphere, now fading with daylight. "And what about you?" She gave him a wistful look, her outline trembling again. "My part here is done." I was the whisper that got through. The bridge only stands until the first crossing. He felt a tightness in his chest he couldn't name. "You'll leave." "I have to," she said gently. "They'll pull me back before your gravity breaks me completely." He took a step closer, desperate now. "Then before you go, tell me what all of this meant. Why me?" Her hand rose, and for a moment it steadied against his chest, light and warmth and static all at once. "Because you listened when others only measured. You sent a message not for fame or control, but out of loneliness. That's the seed every great story grows from. Human loneliness and hope." His throat tightened. "You called me human the first time, as if it was a joke." Her laugh was faint, but real. "It still is, partly. You're a strange species. Reckless, tender, impossible not to root for." The tone in her voice hollowed as her form flickered once more. "They'll watch from far away now. The next chapter is yours to write." A gust of desert wind swept across the platform, carrying grains of sand that glittered briefly in her fading light. Then her outline began breaking apart, dissolving into thin ribbons that floated upward. Following the retreating glow, he reached up instinctively, but she was gone before his fingers could find resistance. Only the faint shimmer remained, curling into the sky like smoke that remembered how to sing. For a long time, he just stood there as the noise of the bass revived behind him, vehicles moving, voices overlapping, reports being filed. He knew the official statements would come soon. Energy anomaly resolved, contact unconfirmed, containment successful. The world would debate and argue, but no explanation would fit into the neat boxes people liked. He wasn't sure he wanted it to. Later that morning, he walked among the wrecked consoles, checking each system. The damage was bad, but not permanent. The power grid flickered back to life, and one by one, screens revived. On a single dark monitor hidden among the chaos, faint lines of text began to appear without input. He froze. "Keep listening." He smiled through his exhaustion. "Always," he whispered back. Then the text vanished, leaving the screen black except for a faint reflection of dawn. By the end of the week, the government sent cleanup crews. The base was labeled as experimental grounds affected by a classified testing malfunction. The few who had seen the full event signed silence agreements. But sometimes, in hushed corners, people spoke of what they'd felt, that fleeting peace in the middle of the storm, as if something gigantic had paused to breathe with them before moving on. He left the program afterward. Too many eyes watched him, and too many questions never had clear answers. He moved to the coast, taking a small place near the ocean still, distant, endless enough to remind him how small he was. Yet on quiet nights, when the tide receded and the stars shone clear, he could sense her presence again, faint as memory. Drifting through the static of distant waves, he kept a small transmitter in his workshop, rebuilt from the parts of the one that had started it all. It sat silent most days, but sometimes when the clouds thinned and the signal interference dropped low, he turned it on, not to call, not to beg, just to send a simple line into the dark. "We're still listening," in those moments. The static carried a warmth that wasn't supposed to be possible. Maybe it was imagination. Maybe it was her. Maybe hope itself had a frequency if you were patient enough to hear it. Years later, he watched a generation take to the stars again, building ships, beaming messages, looking upward with the same hunger that had once gotten him into trouble. They weren't afraid anymore, not like before. Curiosity had outlived fear. And somewhere beyond the noise of the cosmos, he liked to think she was smiling, that playful, luminous being who had teased him with her first words and changed what human meant forever. The desert site eventually grew over with sand and silence. Satellites passed above it endlessly, marking nothing but coordinates. But if someone were to stand there at midnight, they might catch a faint shimmer in the air like dust catching moonlight, or an echo remembering a voice, and if the wind hit just right, it might even sound like a question whispered across infinity, filled with humor and affection both. What else do you expect to receive from me, human? Then the silence after would say everything.